It's termed as source documents and coding. Now, what exactly do you mean by this source documents and coding, and what exactly is this area of source documents and coding? So let's try to have some discussion on it. First of all, it's chapter number 5 of MA1. It's chapter number 5 of MA1, and this specific chapter, you might not come across these concepts again, but when you will go into the practical life, whatever that you will be studying over here, this is going to help you out. This is going to help you out in your practical life. Now let's talk and let's discuss that what exactly do you mean by the concept of coding. So when we talk about the concept of coding, so what do you mean by code? Like for example, if you look at the computerized national identity card number, so like for example, what happens is the identity card numbers are like this 42101. Okay, now see, if you look at the CNIC number of anyone in Pakistan, then what you would do is that you would see that the CNIC number looks like this. So that means what happens is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and this 13. So if you look at any of the CNIC number, this is how the CNIC number is going to look like, which is that 5 digits and then a dash, and then 6 digits and then a dash. Sorry, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 5 digits, 7 digits, and then 1 digit. So this is how it's actually going to look like. 5 digits, 7 digit, and 1 digit. So this is what a CNIC number looks like. Now see, each and every single aspect of this CNIC number is actually telling you something. What is it actually telling you? It's actually telling you the city. It's telling you province. It's telling you gender. It's telling you the family code. It's telling you, it's telling you almost every single thing. So like for example, what happens is that if you look at this last digit, you would realize that this digit, it could be an odd number or it could be an even number. So what the government they've done is they have classified that whatever the odd number is, they are going to be for the male gender and the even number is going to be for the female gender. So if you could look at the CNIC number of anyone, if there's going to be somebody who is male, then this is going to be an odd number. Somebody who's going to be a female, then this is actually going to be an even number. Now let's move a bit forward and discuss further. So what happens is every organization, every country, every company, what they do is that they want to classify their items, and for that they actually assign the code. They want to classify their items, and for that they want to assign the code. So what exactly a code could be? So it says a code could be a system of words, letters, figures, or symbols used to represent others. So what it could be? It could be words, letters, figures, symbols, etc., etc., etc. Now, what exactly do you mean by the different types of code? So let's try to understand this thing. There is this one type of code that is being mentioned, and that is sequential or progressive code. Now, what exactly do you mean by sequential or progressive code? Now see, this is the example of one of the stationery that is being provided, where you could see that it says 4 means 4 centimeter nails. 4-3 means office stapler. This means hand wrench. Now, for example, if there is a stationery shop, let's say, if there is a stationery shop, so what actually happens is it has provided or a stationery or a hardware shop. What it has done is it says that whatever the office stapler that are available in my inventory. So what I would do is that I would give my inventory a code of 000 or 043. So every single stapler is going to be provided the code of 43. So like for example, when you will actually be creating an invoice. So at the time of creating an invoice, the code that is going to be applicable, if let's say that code, and this is this item, this is this quantity, and this is this amount. Now, for example, if you write down this code of, let's say 0000043, the item is going to be office stapler. And you would mention how many 20 quantities being given. Now, what happens is when you would have the inventory sheet, the stock sheet, you would have the stock sheet like this, which is the code and the quantity. So what do we have? We have got item number 42, 5,000. We have got item number 43, 1,000. We have got item number 44, 750. So what is it actually going to be? This is actually going to be what? You have a stock sheet, you have given the code, and you have mentioned the quantity, that this is what my code is, this is what the quantity that is available to us. So I repeat, whenever you come across this code, the code could be assigned in different manners, and the only objective of the code is to give an identification to anything. Now let's move a bit forward. And this is another group of, this is another classification that is given to the code, and that is a block or group classification code. Now, what do we mean by this? For example, let's talk about some of these screws. You can have a screw which is 1 inch. You can have a screw which could be 2 inch. You can have a cut screw. You can have a long screw. There could be different types of screws. Now you are maintaining the record of hardwares. So what happens is you have given that any specific screw would fall under the category of 5. So the code 5 starts for the screw. Now let's say screw N, N, N. So that means there are 4 more digits that are available in front of any screw. Like maybe possible what you could do is that you could say that we have actually assigned the code to any of our inventory like this. We've assigned the code of the inventory like N, 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 like 4 digits are assigned. The main identification. The second one of them is the size. The third one of them is, let's say, color. And the fourth one of them is going to be the type. Now, for example, the main identification is screw. The screws are classified in 5. Size. If it's a 1 inch, then size is 1. If it's a 2 inch, then size is 2. 3 inch, 3. 4 inch, 4. 5 inch, 5. If it's a white color, 1. If it's a silver color, then 2. If it's a golden color, then 3. If it's a black color, then 4. Now type. If it's a normal screw, 1. If it's a cut screw, 1. If it's a cut screw, 2. If it's a, let's say, if it's going to be, okay, now these are 2 different types of screws that are available. Now, if somebody tells me that I have obtained the inventory, which is coded as 5332. So now, if somebody tells me that I have obtained the inventory and the code of that inventory is 5332. So if I'm operating in this specific organization, which mentions the name of its inventory like this, so how would I actually assign the codes to it? Which is of 2 inch and which is of 3 inch and which is golden color and a cut screw. So what happens is when you assign these codes, so these codes actually help you identify. I repeat, these codes actually help you identify the inventory. I repeat, what happens is these codes actually help you identify an inventory, because what happens is you have got a system where you have defined what this code actually means. So if you have got a system where you have defined that what the code actually means, so this is actually going to be like this. It's going to read like this. Like let's say it's 5332. So this means it's a screw because the screw is 5. Now, the second is 3 inch. Then the third one of them is a gold color, and the fourth one of them is it's actually a cut type screw. The objective of giving these codes? The objective of giving these codes is that these codes actually help you identify what the inventory is. I repeat, these codes actually help you identify what the inventory is. Yes, it's specifically designed to trace the item. It's specifically designed to trace the items. Now let's move a bit forward. There's this mnemonic code. Now, a very important thing. Like for example, when you go and look at the airline, it says PK702. It says PK706. So what is this? This PK, it's a Pakistan International Airline, and this code is being given to the specific route. This is the route, and this is the airline. So same goes here. Like for example, it says Los Angeles is given this code LX, Cairo is CAI, Singapore is this, LHR is London Heathrow. Now what happens is when you go for Lahore, the code is LHE. Internationally, I repeat, internationally, there are mnemonic codes And what are these mnemonic codes available for? These mnemonic codes are available to refer to the airports. These are referred to the cities. These are available to refer to the time zones, etc., etc., etc. So what is it? When you actually see at times you come across different airports in Pakistan also. Let's say you've got SKZ. This is a Sakhar airport. You've got ISB. This is the Islamabad airport. You've got KHI. This is Karachi International Airport. You've got LHE. That is a Lahore airport. Now, you've got specific time zones like GMT. This is the Greenwich Mean Time. You've got PKT, which is called Pakistan Time. You've got PST, which is the Pacific Standard Time, etc., etc. Yes, mnemonic codes are specific. Now, mnemonic codes are usually the international codes, and they could be localized codes also. But the only objective of these mnemonic codes is that, I repeat, the only objective of these mnemonic codes is that they usually operate in a specific manner such that they ensure that what you as an organization do is that you know that what is actually mentioned, and they're usually available internationally. Okay, there are further codes which is basically called hierarchical codes. Now, what exactly do you mean by hierarchical codes? Try to understand this. It's again, it's a type of the types of the faceted and etc. block digit type of codes, where it says 3 is for a screw, 3-1 is for flat-headed screw, 3-2 is for round-headed screws, and 3-2-2 is for steel screws, and so on. So what happens is you specifically give codes and you define those codes. You specifically give codes and you define those codes. That's how you do it. Okay, let's move a bit forward. Let's discuss further. Now, what happens is there is another concept which is called the chart of accounts. Now, what exactly do you mean by this chart of accounts? Try to understand this thing. What happens is whenever you incorporate the accounting system in any organization, so you have to define a chart of accounts. I repeat, you have to establish a chart of account. Now, what exactly do you mean by this chart of account? Try to understand this. The chart of account actually is it's a list of codes for various items. I'm going to take this example which is available here in the book to help you understand that how the chart of account is actually structured. Now see, just take this example. It says whatever the non-current asset is, the non-current asset would have a code of 1000 to 1099. Current asset 2000 to 2099. Current liability 3000 to 3999, so on and so forth. Now, for example, you've got fixtures and fittings, you've got land and buildings, you've got plant and machinery, motor vehicle. They're all different types of non-current asset. And it says that from 1000 to 1099 are all fixtures and fittings. Land and building 1100 to 1199. Plant and machinery 1200 to 1299, and motor vehicle 1300 to 1399. So now, for example, if I try to extract the trial balance of an entity, so what would happen is there's going to be a heading which is going to be non-current asset, and there's going to be a heading of, let's say, 1055, and this is going to be air conditioners. 1120, plot number 212, 1250, which is machine 701, 1305, Civic, 1333, Toyota, Corolla, etc., etc. Now, what happens is, whenever you have an organization, at times a lot of organization, what they do is that they've got this chart of account, and the chart of account have got a specified range of code for every asset, for every liability, for every income, for every expense. I repeat, the chart of account have got a specified code for every asset, for every liability, for every income. So, like for example, if any of the fixture and fittings comes in, it will lie between 1000 to 1099. Land and building is going to be between 1100 to 1199. Now, for example, if I write down, let's say 1309, and I write down receivable. So what happens is you would be like asking, you'll be raising a question mark that how could receivable, you'll be raising a question mark that how could receivable fall under this? I repeat, how could receivable fall under this? Because what happens is receivable is a current asset and the current assets are falling under this code. And the current assets are falling under this code. So what happens is the codes are there to give the identity to items. The codes are there to give identity to the items. There could be at times codes, and those codes could have the alphabetical codes also. Like you can have this, it says customer J Miller and Co, M Miller, A Milton. So it's just mentioning that this is the customer, which is MIL, and then the relevant number of the customer. I hope that you do understand the different types of codes right now. Now, what happens is, let's talk about the advantages of a coding system. That what are the advantages of a coding system? It says a code is usually briefer than the description, thereby saving clerical time in manual system and storage space in computerized system. So obviously, when you have the code they save time. You just have to define the code once and then you go on and mentioning the code. It says code is more precise than a description and therefore reduces ambiguity. Yes, definitely. Like if somebody writes round-headed screw and there could be a round screw, there are two different things. One of them is a round-headed screw and the other one of them is a round screw. There could be two different things. But when you have got a specifically defined code, so what happens with respect to the definition of the code, this thing actually gets settled properly. Why? The reason behind that is the code it avoids any ambiguity. You specifically know what are you talking about. I repeat, you specifically know what you are talking about. Now, there are further few more things with respect to this specific chapter. And one of them is basically there are different documents for buying and selling. Although we have discussed them earlier also, but I'll just go about having a quick discussion. So one of them is actually called the purchase requisition. If you could remember, we have studied this earlier also, but it says purchase requisition is passed to the purchase department who will decide on the most appropriate supplier. So what happens is it's generally the store department in the organization which manages the stock. Then there is this purchasing department. And what happens is you've got a store department, there is this purchasing department, and there's this third department, which is going to be the supplier. In fact, not the third department, there is a supplier. So what happens is, for example, if the store manager, he thinks that the goods are not available, the inventory is not available. So what he does is he issues a purchase requisition. What does he do? He issues a purchase requisition. The purchase requisition identifies what item does he want, in how much quantity does he want, etc., etc. That is actually considered to be purchase requisition. So when we talk about the concept of purchase requisition, the concept of purchase requisition is that the purchase requisition is sent by a store department to the purchasing department, identifies what items to be bought and in what quantity they need to be bought. So this is a sample purchase requisition which is available to you. I repeat, a sample purchase requisition which is available to you. You've got a unique number. You've got a unique number of this requisition. The date is mentioned. Quantity is mentioned. So that's 1, 2. The description is mentioned. Number 5, supplier's catalog number. And this purchase order number or supplier, this is actually mentioned in here because it actually is that detail which the store department is giving to the purchase department. So ultimately, will the purchase department buy from this supplier The answer is no. It depends upon the purchase department's own will that from which supplier do they wish to buy. It depends upon purchase supplier's own will, that purchase department's own will that from which supplier do they intend to buy. Okay. The next is actually about the quotation or estimate. So you do have an idea that whenever the purchase department, what they do is that they contact XYZ supplier, supplier 1, supplier 2, supplier 3, etc., etc., etc. So when these purchase departments, they contact XYZ supplier, supplier 1, supplier 2, supplier 3. So ultimately what happens is they seek quotation from each supplier. What is the quotation? That look, this is what we want to buy, and tell us that what are going to be your rates and what are going to be your payment terms. So what happens is the supplier, what he does is he gives you a quotation. I repeat, what happens is the supplier, what he does is he gives you a quotation. Okay. If I can ask you people, what is a trade discount and what is a cash discount? So trade discount is what? Trade discount is provided upon purchases. Trade discount is provided upon purchases, whereas the cash discount is provided for the purposes of settlement. This is usually an incentive which is being provided for early payment. This is an incentive that is being provided for the early payment. Okay, next document is the purchase order. What is the purchase order? It's an order which is sent by your purchase department to the supplier. So what do you tell in the purchase order? That look, Mr. XYZ, we want to buy this XYZ item in XYZ quantity and we'll pay you XYZ amount. So when we talk about the purchase order, it's also termed as the purchase order is PO. So you usually mention the quantity, the item, at the same time the price which has been agreed, and also the payment terms, etc., etc. So all of these things are mentioned in the purchase order. Next, when we talk about this delivery note, so what happens with respect to delivery note is that whenever the supplier he delivers the goods to the customer, he actually accompanies a delivery note. What is mentioned in the delivery note? The delivery note includes item, the quantity for each item. And the supplier, what he does is he obtains a signature from the customer on this delivery note. He obtains a signature from the customer on this delivery note. And what is the objective of obtaining the signature from the customer on this delivery note? The objective of obtaining the signature from the customer on this delivery note is to ensure that the customer agrees that the following goods have been delivered to him. Then this good receive note. What is this good receive note? So the warehouse department, what happens is whenever it records in its own system the goods which are received. So what happens is he issues a good receive note, and it mentions that what quantity and what is the purchase order number, what is the item, who is the supplier, etc., etc. He mentions all these things, that we have received this many quantity of XYZ goods, etc., etc. The purchase invoice is the invoice sent by a supplier. Now, when you move a bit forward, so, okay, now, what happens is, there's a section in the book which is about coding of purchases. What exactly do you mean by coding of purchases? So, generally speaking, what happens is when you purchase, so by normal means, we say that the purchase means inventory is being purchased. But at times, what happens is you incur the different type of expenses. Like the expenses could be incurred for the utility, the expenses could be incurred for the taxation, etc., etc., etc. So what you could probably do is that you could also mention, I repeat, what you could probably do is that you could also mention the code for them also. I repeat, what you could do is that you could mention the codes for them also. So that is another way of coding, another way of assigning the codes.